Bienvenidos a todos. Welcome. Thank you very much for showing up. I know this is a difficult time for everybody, so I appreciate you being here. We are also simulcasting on YouTube, but the YouTube is delayed by about 24 seconds or so. So if you're watching on Zoom and you are watching, thank you very much for and you are watching on Zoom. So if you're watching on YouTube and you're watching on Zoom, just like I just did, you need to mute one or the other. Uh, but here on Zoom, I can see your chats pretty easy. And also on YouTube, they stream to me. So I just see Isabella Morel wrote, Hola, estoy aquí. Bienvenidos. Isabella, again, thank you everybody for being here. We're going to do the full unwrap today of my book, My Complete Spanish Language Journal, which we'll call the Language Journal or the Spanish Language Journal from this point going forward. Thank you again for being here. Muchas gracias. And hopefully your isolation is going well. I know some of you may have been affected by the COVID virus, and you certainly have my sympathies and the sympathies of your friends, and hope that you fully recover. I'm proud to say that my book is being endorsed by Paul. I want to make clear that I am not an employee of Paul. I don't work for Paul. I'm not subcontracted by Paul. I am no way affiliated with Paul other than Raina and I have a users group, a Facebook users group for his material. Like you, I'm a big believer in what Paul does. I see Roz has signed up. Hola, hola, Roz. And I'm proud to say that Paul's endorsed my book. I sent it to him several months ago. He looked through it very thoroughly, gave me a lot of recommendations, and wrote back an endorsement that he believes it's an excellent resource for anyone studying Spanish and something that I highly recommend. What I love most is the way this book holds your hand throughout the entire journey of learning a language, through the good days and the bad. It speeds up the process and makes the challenge ahead easier. I'm delighted Dan has made this excellent resource available for all of us to benefit from. It's very clever and clearly written by someone who truly understands what it takes to succeed at learning Spanish. Now, I want to make clear that the book itself, the journal itself, does not teach you Spanish. It's a guide and it's a help. It's a companion that you should have while you're studying Spanish. And it works not only with Spanish with Paul, it works with any Spanish system. So whether you're using Pimsleur, whether you're using the Spanish Gringo, whether you're using Spanish with Juan, or Spanish with Paul Noble, or any of the other Spanish systems out there, Spanish Land, etc. This companion journal, this language journal, is something that you need to have. And I'm going to go over it step by step with you today. I'm going to show you first how the book is basically divided into two sections. It's divided into helps, and it's divided into the journal itself. Now, before I begin, let me just back up and make it clear that due to COVID, there are delays in receiving the books in some countries. We're seeing about a 3 to 5 day delay in the UK and in the US. In Australia, there's about a full month delay. I've been assured by Amazon that it will be available on the Amazon website over the next month, but that the COVID delay has basically halted all books from the US going into Amazon. And there's also a delay in Canada. So I ask for your patience on that. That's totally out of my control. And I thank you for your willingness to wait for it. So again, let's start with how the book is divided. The first 100 or so pages are helps that you need at your fingertips. that as you study Spanish, it's something that you can quickly go back to and say, okay, what's the what was the answer for this particular thing or that particular thing without having to go and look it up somewhere else. So if you take your, if you're studying out at the beach or down at the park, you don't have internet access except maybe by a smartphone, well, you've got your journal and you can take it from there. But it starts out with what I call the four big deals. The four big deals are the reasons, the resources, the obstacles, and the people in your process of studying Spanish. And it has you to document those four big deals. Now, that's not for the immediate use, as many things in the journal are. It's for future use, as when you get to the point that you want to remind yourself from the very beginning, what was your reason why you wanted to become fluent? What were the resources that you thought you needed to become fluent? What were things that would maybe possibly interfere with your goal of becoming fluent? And then finally, people who can help you achieve fluency. And what your plans to avoid the problems were, how are you going to get those people to connect with you, and so forth. So it documents the four big deals. Then it provides you the 29 rules for cognates, and the book includes 890 cognates, but there are 29 rules for cognates to build your cognate, to build your vocabulary, and you can quickly build your vocabulary. The book, again, lists 890 cognates. It would list more, but the book is 520 pages, and I didn't want to go any farther with the cognates when you can yourself go farther with that. It's more important that you memorize those rules and understand the rules. But it also gives you a place where you can practice those rules. Okay, then it gives you the complete Spanish conjugation system in one easy to use place. It spreads over a number of pages. We're going to take a look at the book in detail in a minute, but it has the complete conjugation system. It lists the 100 most frequently used verbs, and more importantly, when did you acquire them? So right now, if I asked you what were the top or 100 most frequently used verbs, you may or may not be able to pull them out of the top of your head. But as you look down the list, you might say, oh, I know that one, and I know that one, and I can conjugate that one. And so the journal has a way for you to document that you know or you don't know those verbs, so you can focus your attention on them. The journal also has the 33 most frequently used irregular verbs, our friends that we have to memorize. We just can't get around that. But again, it has not only a listing of what those verbs are and their definitions, but the date that you acquired them. So again, it gives you a way to go back through and say, oh, I've got these irregular verbs down. Here's the list of verbs that I need to work on. 500 most frequently used words. And again, the date that you acquired them. Past tense usage helps for those questions about when do I use the imperfect, when do I use the preterite. Those questions, the journal itself has helps on when to know, when to use, which past tense. And in detail, it goes over the 16 most frequently used irregular verbs in every conjugation form. These, again, are the ones that you need to memorize. Paul has a list of things that he says that most people fail at in Spanish, and one of them is this process of not memorizing those irregular verbs. So this is the section of the book that I refer to as the helps, and I have it in the front of the journal. Then the journal itself, which is the bulk of the book, contains a built-in how-to guide. So you could get the book and never see a video like this, never attend a webinar like this, and the book will still teach you how to use it. It has 6 months of daily activities, 6 months of weekly summaries, and a built-in notes section at the end. Let's take a look at the first few pages, which contain the table of contents, so you can see how comprehensive the table of contents are. The table of contents lists out the Spanish cognates, the Spanish conjugation quick glance with all of the verb tenses that it covers, the 100 most frequently used verbs, the 33 most frequently used irregular verbs, 500 most frequently used words, the 16 most frequently used irregular verbs, what to say in certain circumstances, and a test for how fluent you are. So there's a couple of things in this book when we go into the book and actually look at it that you'll see that are really not available in any other kind of document. So these are the types of questions that we all see and ask each other in our Facebook group. And one recently that was posted, I'll start with that one, is why can I read better than I can speak? Other types of questions that we see and have ourselves are, why do I seem to forget the vocabulary that I've studied? Or how can I tell if I'm improving? And you go through a period of 3 months, 6 months, or maybe 9 months, and how can you really measure your improvement and in a way that can motivate you to keep on going? Because one of the biggest questions that people ask is, how do I maintain my motivation? How do I maintain that motivation? It all comes down to uncertainty, doesn't it? When we went into this lockdown situation, this became my word, uncertainty. The Spanish word incertidumbre, uncertainty. How do I know these things? How can I know for certain? So the journal helps you to answer these questions first through some introspection on a daily basis. And the definition of introspection, according to the dictionary, is an examination or observation of one's own mental and emotional processes. But that definition in my book is a little bit wordy, because really introspection is the examination or observation of any of your processes. To sit back and think, how can I observe what it is that I do in a way that I can then measure it, and I can track if I'm getting better at it or if I'm losing motivation with it. And so an introspection. Secondly, the book requires that you are honest with yourself. It requires honesty with self. This is your language journal. It isn't a language journal that you're going to post online. It's not a language journal that you're going to create a web blog for. Of course, you can if you want, but this book requires honesty with yourself. And then the next thing is personal transparency. Personal transparency. The book requires that you have a very open and real conversation with yourself about where you're at. So bottom line is, it is a way, the journal is, this book is a way for you to track your daily Spanish learning. The way that I want to edit that a little bit is, it's a way for you to privately track your daily Spanish learning, in a journal. And a journal is a daily record of news and events of personal nature. You might call it a diary. Again, I'm not a big fan of the web blog. I don't want to hang out all my laundry out there for everyone. But it is your logbook for how you can track where you are at with Spanish learning. Now, here we go. That's why I call it my complete Spanish language learning journal. And you can just remember the web address for it is Daily Language Journal. And the Language Journal measures and helps you to measure and track 6 areas of your learning, starting with reading, speaking, writing, listening, motivation, and studying. And it helps you to measure your success in these areas, whether your success is high, medium, or low. It tells you whether you're on track, at risk, in trouble. You've put a part of your learning on hold, or worse yet, you just haven't even started it, you haven't completed it, or you stopped it. So we look at these 6 areas of learning. You'll notice that there's a line that divides them. The line that is above is the outward processes, the reading, the speaking, and the writing. The others, the studying, motivation, and listening, those are the inward processes. We do the reading outwardly. We do the others inwardly. Give me just one moment. There we go. Okay. So for example, you may say in your own personal judgment, wow, I can read really well. I don't know all the words as I read them, but I enjoy reading. I get the sense of it. It makes sense to me. I can understand what they're saying. Sometimes I have to look up a word or two, but with reading, I feel like I'm on track. And oftentimes we hear this from folks in our group. With speaking, I feel like I'm in trouble. I don't know how to get saying what I want to say. I don't know how to conjugate in my head, or I feel a certain sense of fear. So I would say that the book would help you to be able to measure that you're in trouble with your speaking. But again, with the writing as an outward process, you're right on track. Someone said the other day in the group, I thought it was very funny. They said that if you measured fluency by writing, they would be considered fluent. And reading and writing seems to come easier to us that are not in an immersive experience. So let's look at some of the inward processes like listening. Wow, if you start something on one of the streaming services, a show that you've never seen before, and it has no English subtitles and they're talking rapidly, you go down to a local store and you hear people speaking in Spanish, and they've got their own particular accent and they're speaking fast. How would you measure your ability to listen? And most of us would say it's low, and that our Spanish ear hasn't developed. And consequently, that can drag our motivation down. And so we would say that our motivation is also in trouble. Just today, I was reading in one of the groups, someone wrote, I started and I stopped, but I'm going to start again. When we start and we stop, that comes back to motivation. And then our studying. If you would ask people, well, how's your studying? It's a very nebulous measurement. It's like, oh, not too bad, más o menos. I mean, it could be better, it could be worse. And so the question is, there's a concern there. It's something at risk. So the book helps us to measure these areas and to see whether or not they're actually in balance. So for example, with the graph that we've just looked at, reading and writing is outweighing studying because everything else is red. So on all the outward elements, or some of the outward, the majority of the outward elements are outweighing the inward elements. So that's where the introspection begins, where you really have to start asking yourself these types of questions that the book will help you answer. How much time am I spending? What activities have I done? How satisfied am I with the work that I've completed in each of those areas? And what is my attitude, my motivation during that particular day? What was my learning mood? Not just in general, but in each of these activities. How satisfied, what's my learning mood in each of these activities? And so the introspection leads to transparency. And the transparency is the physical book itself. Instead of you just being able to say, yeah, this is how I feel about it, you have a book now, a journal, a physical journal that will hold your feet to the fire and help you to be able to see as a complete and honest record for your own self where you're at. And it'll answer the questions of where you were at 3 days ago. You're having a great day today. Well, what about 3 days ago? Or you're not having a good day today. Well, why were you having such a great day 3 days ago? What about 2 weeks ago? What did you study 2 weeks ago? What were some of the nagging questions that you never got answered 2 weeks ago? And could those things be affecting you now? And it's important to be able to answer to yourself, if you want to be transparent and honest with yourself, is where is this exact tracking at? And so all of this is tied together and is in a cycle of introspection and in transparency where you're honest with yourself. Honesty with self is the key to making this journal work. And again, it's your journal. So let's go over the journal itself. And by the way, I'm going to be taking questions toward the end of the process. I'm going to have plenty of time for questions. As a matter of fact, I'll stay online as long as you have questions. I'll stay online. But I want to go through the book itself before we get to the questions. So let's explain the journal itself. The how to use the book instructions that are included cover 3 full pages that are absolutely already in the book of how to use the book. And it explains to you how to begin at the start of the day. The journal is not dated, so you can start it whenever. And you would just start out by writing the date and the date. And then the journal wants to know, what was your vocabulary 5 days ago? What was your vocabulary 10 days ago? And the purpose of this section in the daily part of your journal is to have a built-in spaced repetition system. It isn't good enough that you just studied it 5 days ago. Just at that point where you start to forget it, the journal helps you to remember what it was. So the spaced repetition system that's built into the journal is 5 days ago, 7 days ago, and 10 days ago. Now you don't see the 7 here on this page, but it's on the weekly review pages. So the vocabulary from 5 days ago and 10 days ago is on every page in the daily section. And this is our spaced repetition system. And if you're not familiar with this phrase, spaced repetition system, I encourage you to look up the works of Paul Pimsleur. You can do a Google search on Paul Pimsleur. And he's one of the pioneers in the language learning industry who recognized that one of the best ways to cement into our long-term memory something that we're trying to learn, no matter what it is that we're trying to learn, is to remind ourselves of what that thing is right at the point where we're about to forget it. And as we go forward, that spacing can be farther and farther spread out. So the journal has a spaced repetition system built into it for the vocabulary. And it also asks you for your goals from yesterday. These are those things that you haven't been able to finish. Again, being honest with yourself. You haven't finished a particular goal, add it. Add that goal. And again, vocabulary every day, pushing vocabulary. Jude has encouraged us to learn at least 3 new words per day. And so 3 is the key that I've used here for my journal. is how many words am I trying to learn? But you may be pressing yourself harder than that. And if you are, it's very simple just to split the column, and now you can double the amount of words. You can quadruple the amount of words by just using a comma between each word that you're learning. But it has a section for you to write down the vocabulary that you're learning today and your goals for today. These have to be realistic. And let me help you out with realistic goals. Goals that can be observed are goals that can be measured. So if you can observe a goal, then you should be able to measure that goal and whether or not you've accomplished it. Now, these are goals for today. It isn't a long-term goal. Like your long-term goal is to be able to be conversationally fluent or maybe a master fluent in Spanish. But what is the goal for today that is going to incrementally get you to your long-term goal? And so be realistic about this. Memorize today's vocabulary. Speak to my tutor about my questions that I haven't got answered. Send that email off for a question about such and such. So be realistic about your goals. Now, all of us have, as we go through our day, as each day progresses, we come across things in Spanish that we just don't know the answer to, or why is it that way? And so the book provides you a way to document the things that you have questions about, and gives you plenty of room to list what those out. And so it's important, to be honest with yourself, that you don't let your questions go unanswered. It's part of the reason why we have our Facebook group. It's part of the reason why you should have a tutor, a language partner, someone in a language exchange. Don't let your questions go unanswered. Try to find the answers to your questions. And the journal helps you to track the things that you have questions about and consequently their answers. As the day progresses, the journal asks you to document the time that you've spent. And I'm going to show this to you in detail in just a little while, but it provides you some blocks. And the journal is set up to where each block equals 5 minutes, and there's enough blocks for 2 hours. So if you're studying for 2 hours a day, there's enough blocks for you there. Now, let's say you're really pushing it hard and you're studying 4 hours a day. Not a problem at all. Just divide each block in half, and each block becomes then 10 minutes. And I can show you a trick for doing that as well. But it's important that you log your study time, because you're going to be using that information weeks from now to be able to try to understand why you have built motivation or lost motivation, or have increased your ability in a particular area, or have seemed to become stagnant in a particular area by logging your study time. And then one of the things that it has is each day it has a way that you can track sentences that you've read, or interesting things that you've come across, or a phrase that you've heard, or one that you've created on your own. I like to read the Colombian Spanish newspaper each day on the internet. My favorite one is tubarco.news. And I like how the journalists there will turn a phrase a particular way that I've never heard before. And so the journal allows me to write that down and to document that, to practice that, to kind of dissect it and make it a part of my learning process. And so interesting things from today is a part of your daily, in the day, as the day progresses, learning process. Then the journal has a section called Special Words for Today. And one of them, the Daily Word Builder, I'm going to show you in detail in just a few minutes, I'm real proud of, because I can't find this type of thing anywhere else. And I'll show you what I mean in a little while. But it also has the verb of the day. And the verb of the day, of course, has a definition, You need that. And it gives the gerund for it and the past participle and if it is irregular. And that's in the verb of the day section. And the cognate of the day gives you the word form, whether it's a noun, a verb, an adjective, gives you the English version as well as the Spanish, of course. And it tells you which cognate rule this cognate follows. And that's in our section called Special Words for Today. And at the end of the day, gives you a chance, the journal asks you to self-assess yourself, and it gives you a chance to do that. And this is a copy, a picture from the end of the week, but it has also for the end of the day. And it asks you to measure your activities in each of those 6 areas that I showed you at the very beginning: reading, listening, writing, speaking, studying, and motivation. And to be specific and to assess yourself specifically in the reading. You know, yes, you read, but what did you read? You know, I spent 15 minutes reading the news, or I spent an hour reading the book Ola Lola, or I spent an hour reading, you know, various Spanish novels that I have. So the specific assignment is listed there. And then the satisfaction is measured not in stars, but with the kind of face emojis that you would have when you go to the doctor. You know, the doctor says, let's talk about your pain. And which of these levels, all the way from being very sad with your progress to being enthused about your progress. So it has a self-assessment in each of the major areas of learning. And again, this takes honesty with yourself. If you find yourself over a period of time giving yourself, you know, super happy smiley faces for everything that you do, and yet you still have trouble listening, then you're probably, if you think about it, if you practice some introspection, you're probably measuring your satisfaction wrong here. You need to set your own bar up a little bit higher. So let's switch over to the book and take a look at what the book has for us. So give me just a second to here in my little mini studio to switch over for you. There we go. Great. All right. So we have, here's the book. All right. So here's our book, My Complete Spanish Language Learning Journal. One of the things I really like about the book is that the cover is quite durable, has very Tyvek kind of feel to the cover of the book. Doesn't feel like plain paper. It's going to be a very durable book. It's 520 pages, and the back section contains just a few pages of notes for you. But the book is divided, as I mentioned a moment ago, into the first section, which is helps, and the back section, which is the journal itself. It has a very detailed table of contents, very exhaustive table of contents that covers each of the help activities that I mentioned before. And so you shouldn't have any problems if you're looking for something in particular of finding it right off. It covers the reasons, the resources, and the obstacles, and the people. You know, one of the things that I think everybody should answer is the question of what things could interfere with my goals and the plans that I have to avoid those. You're going to need that down the road as you're trying to predict and avoid the problems that you're finding. The Cognate section, as I mentioned, it covers all the 29 rules of the cognates. The Cognate section describes the cognates, you know, how you can recognize them, what the ending should be. It has it both in English and in Espanol, and it gives you a space to create a sentence with that cognated word. So there's some workspace available for you. Some of the cognates, some of us know very well, and have no problem. Maybe like ATE equals AR. So you know, abdicate, abdicar, you know, is not a problem. But there's also some cognates that are a little bit more tricky, that are definitely covered with the book. And the one that stands out to me is those that look for a pattern. Here we go. That follow a pattern, like a vowel, consonant, and a T. And so you have the word accept. Okay, so the vowel is the letter E. The consonant is P, followed by T. And so when you have a vowel, consonant, and a T, you can change it to tar or tier. So accept becomes acceptar. And again, a place for you to create a sentence with that cognated word. That includes the entire conjugation for Spanish verbs. That goes over several pages with plenty of room for you to jot your own notes down. Again, it's very detailed. And then we begin the frequently used words and verbs. And as I mentioned, the date that they were acquired. So, for example, on a regular verb, you may know pasar and devar and deber. When did you acquire them? And, you know, you could write 2019, 2018, 2020. I don't need the date and the timestamp there. But just a way that you can go down and say, oh, I have several blanks here. I really need to focus on these verbs. And we do that with the 33 most frequently used irregular verbs as well. The frequency, the verb, the definition, and the date that it was acquired. The 500 most frequently used words, the Spanish, the English, and when it was acquired. When to use what form of past tense. What to say, for example, and to start a sentence, to connect sentences together, you know, Paul's connector phrases, and others that Paul doesn't cover. What to say when needing to connect two sentences together, or speaking about places, or speaking about time. What to say to add an idea, to contrast ideas, to show results. That's in the what to say. And then in detail, the 16 most frequently used irregular verbs. And it includes both, it includes the Spanish vosotros as well. And so it isn't just for Latin American. This is also for the Spanish vosotros, is listed here as well. And one of the things I hope you'll notice is that the font that I'm using here is easy to read and has the subtlety of showing you the Spanish and the English without defining that out. Then the book has a section for you to measure your fluency. And again, with some honesty and some introspection, you can answer the questions that are listed in these areas. And the book asks you to assign a certain point level. You know, for example, how fluent am I when it comes to reading? How fluent am I when it comes to listening? So let's take a look at the listening. For example, it says, I can recognize familiar words and very basic phrases concerning myself, my family, and immediate concrete surroundings when people speak slowly and clearly. And that's the bottom level, and it's worth 1 point. Or are you at the next level? I can understand phrases in the highest frequency vocabulary related to areas of most immediate personal relevance, basic personal and family information, shopping, local area employment. I can catch the main point in short, clear, simple messages and announcements. And it goes all the way up to the level of I have no difficulty in understanding any spoken language, whether live or broadcast, even when it's delivered at fast native speed, provided I have some time to get familiar with the accent. And so you would assign yourself what level you're at. Now, what I like about this is not only are you actually measuring where you're at, but it tells you what you need to focus in on to get to the next level. So if you're at the level where you can understand phrases of the highest frequency vocabulary and short, simple messages, then the next level you need to get up to is where you can start understanding clear standard speech of familiar matters that happen at work and school and so forth that you might hear on the radio or TV in order to be able to go from a 2 to a 3. So it has these sections for listening, for reading, for conversational speaking, for general speaking, for writing, each of our areas. And then you total up the points where you're currently at. And I would use a pencil for this because you're going to improve. And then based off those points, it gives you both the standard English level of, like, for example, proficient user or independent user, but it also gives you the European CFR level, whether you're at a C2, C1, B2, B1, B2, or B1. Uh, it should be A1, B2. Okay, so this is this is the help section of the language journal. Then we get into the actual documentation of your daily activities. And again, the how to use the book section I covered earlier is included in the book. And then it gives you 6 reasons why you should be documenting your language learning on a daily basis. Now, I'm not going to go over each of these areas, but basically, I would say this to you. As you're able to measure what it is that you're doing, then you're able to determine how to improve it. And the book is designed to help you to measure that. But again, it requires, self-assessments. It requires self-assessments. It requires goal setting. It requires documented achievements. It requires that that you become your own judge. And then it has the weekly language learning. So let's start off with the journal itself on a daily basis. You'll notice that the day and the date are blank, and you can start whenever you want. Now the book has a built-in study streak. How many days have you studied in a row? Now I know there's a lot of systems out there that gamify Spanish learning. The book doesn't gamify Spanish learning. And by that, I mean it doesn't make a game out of it and attribute points to you based on how many days in a row that you studied. So if you skip a day, you can expend some of those earned game points to neutralize that skip day. Here, the book again asks you to be honest with yourself. So if your study streak is 5, 5 days in a row that you studied, and you skipped a full day, and I'm talking about skip a day that you had planned to study, because I'm a firm believer in taking a planned day off, like Paul teaches, but you skip a day that you're planning to study, then your study streak would start back over at 1. And it's important for you to measure those types of things so that you can see, um, maybe what's the level of endurance that you have with this. Now, you would start off your day by noting the day and date and your study streak. And up to this point, you'd bring forward the total number of verbs that you've acquired. And as you can see, it has the place where you add in your vocabulary from yesterday, your goals from yesterday, your vocabulary from 5 days ago, your vocabulary from 10 days ago. And again, if you learn more than 3 words, you can either write those words out and separate them by a comma, or you can just split the column and double the amount of words that you're learning. Then the book has the section for priorities for today. The priorities for today would be like vocabulary for today and goals for today. And again, the same thing. If you're going to press yourself and learn more than just 3 words, again, there's plenty of room there for you to, to add it in, add the words in, and separate them by a comma, or to split the columns. And your realistic goal for today. Now, as you go through the day, you would document your learning experience as you go through the day. This is also something you could use at the end of the day if you wanted to describe your overall learning experience for today. But if I'm in the middle of reading and I'm interrupted, I could document that here. We're going to skip those special words for today because I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to show you something amazing about that I think that you're going to like. And the second section gives you the interesting things from today. 4 sentences that I read, I heard, I created today. And things that I have questions about. This is where you build your vocabulary. You build not just your vocabulary, but your phraseology. You build your own turn of phrases, as it were. And the things that you have questions about are things that if you don't get answers to, they're going to interfere with your ability to really grow and get to that next level of Spanish. So getting those things written down and actually getting answers to them and coming back and documenting those answers are critically important. And you can see toward the bottom of describing your activities for today, and it's a self-assessment. Reading, listening, writing, speaking, studying, vocabulary, and your level of satisfaction in describing each of those items and logging your study time. As I was mentioning to you, the design of the book is that each block equals 5 minutes. So as I finish 5 minutes, I just mark the box. Mark it whatever way that you want. Okay? But if you want to study for a longer period of time, one of the ways that you can do this is you can just start off by dividing each block. And now each part of this newly divided block is 5 minutes. And so this would be 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 and then 25 minutes. And then at the end of the day, to document how much time have you actually spent studying. Now, that's important, not just for that day, obviously, but over the period of time. As you look through your book, you can see at just a quick flip of a page of what's your average time that you're studying. And if you feel like you're stagnating, maybe the answer is that you need to push yourself a little bit more, or maybe you're overstudying, as Paul calls it. So this gives you a way to actually measure that and see it for yourself. So I want to talk to you about, let me just move on for just a second before I get to the word builder. At the end of the week, At the end of the week, it has your week in review, where you bring forward your vocabulary for the day. And when you get your book, I want you to register your book on the website dailylanguagejournal.com, because I want to give you a lot of tips and hints of different ways of doing this. For example, maybe you're going to make out a list of just the English words, and then you're going to write down the Spanish words, what they are. Or maybe you're going to challenge yourself with a memory test where you don't look at any of the information in the past and you just bring forward those words out of your memory. What were the words that you memorized? What are your biggest achievements for the week? What are your areas for improvement? What are the things that you still have questions about? And again, at the end of the week, and you would number your week here, at the end of the week, how much total time did you spend studying this week? How many new verbs did you learn? How many new words did you learn? And give a self-assessment of all your activities during the week in each of the 6 areas, and your personal level of satisfaction with this. How satisfied are you with what you've achieved? And then you'll notice that the log time here now moves over to 1 hour, and to total that time up. So let's take a look for a moment at the special words for today, because I want to show you something that that I think everyone will like. I don't remember seeing it anywhere else in a book available before, but it's about this daily word builder. So each week starts you off, and we're starting off on a new week on this page because the previous page was our week in review. So we're starting off this week with a simple word, literally a simple word. We're starting it off with a single word, I should say. Each week starts off with one single word. Here is a very simple word, sencilla, simple, easy, straightforward, modest. But you'll notice on the second day, what happens is we add a word to that new word. And so we still have the word sencilla, but now we've added another word to it, either in the front or in the back. Persona sencilla, which means simple person. And the next day, gente sencilla, simple people, simple folk. The next day, vida sencilla, simple life, simple living. We continue through our week. Forma sencilla, simple way. Manera sencilla, again, a simple way, a simple manner. Estructura sencilla, a simple structure. And then we close that week out. And as we start the next week, again, we pick up with a new word. Cargo. And then as we go through the week, we see we added a little bit to that word, a su cargo, which means at so-and-so's expense. Hacerse cargo, deal with, to take over. Altos cargos. So the special words of the day, the daily word builder, just takes a single word, and as you go through the week, you're going to learn that word in a lot of different forms by just adding one word to the front or to the back end of it. Now, all the words you saw so far were adding a new word to the front. There's plenty of examples where we add a word to the back end of it. And again, you can see for the verb of the day here, very familiar verb, comer, gives us the definition, the verb in gerund form, and the past participle. And you'll notice that it does not say that it's irregular here. So this is a regular verb. And then the cognate of the day, urgencia, it's a noun. It's from the English word urgency. And the cognate rule is a word that ends with Y can end with IA in Spanish. Okay, so let's just stop right here for right now. And let me kind of go back over to our presentation and to see if anyone has any questions. Now, there's about a 30-second lag on the YouTube portion of this. So that's fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute everyone who's in the group here. Yeah. So if anyone here has a question, you can mute yourself if you need to mute yourself. But if anyone has a question, you can either raise your hand or just speak out and ask me a question. It's good to see you, Raina and Emmy. So who's got a question for me? Hola, Raina. My friend Raina. All right, I'm going to try to unmute you here.
Okay.
All right, there you are. You're unmuted.
Hola.
You have any questions for me?
No, but the book looks amazing. Congratulations. Can't wait to get it.
Thank you. Let's see. I see a thumbs up there for Emmy. Emmy, you have a question?
Hold on.
There you are.
Hola.
Hola. Where am I? Do I see myself?
No, but everyone can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, hola. No, I ordered it as well, but I saw someone got it really quickly in the UK.
Oh, yeah. Someone got it quickly. I ordered mine and I got mine in 3 days. I'm here in San Diego.
Wow.
And Amazon does all the actual book printing. Mm-hmm. And so it depends on where they have their printers spread out. And unfortunately, there's a lot of rules about printing in countries and so forth. And, countries are very specific. They like books being printed in their own countries for some reason. You can buy a car from Yugoslavia, but you can't buy a book that was printed, like I know Raina's ordered her book, but her book's not going to be coming in until May. Raina lives up in Vancouver. She lives up in Vancouver, right down the street from Raina, in Seattle is where my sister lives. And she got her book in 4 days.
Wow.
So if it wasn't for COVID, she could have just dashed across the border and we could have had it delivered to my sister.
No, unfortunately, we can't right now.
But we can't do that right now.
I would consider it essential travel. Come on now.
Yes, that's right. In Australia, there's nothing moving right now. And they believe, and it's a big F, that maybe in a month they're going to be able to start printing books. But in Australia, it's like a full stop. And so even if you ordered a book, my understanding is it's going to be yes or no. And you used to be able to, there were several ways I could get books to Australia, including them ordering it themselves, but also ordering it internationally or me sending it to them, but not anymore.
Yeah. Oh, looking forward to it.
Yeah. So how about over on, let me ask YouTube, and we'll have about a 30-second lag there. If you have a question on YouTube, just type it in the chat section. Okay, let me see how we're doing on the time. Okay, we're doing great on time. I want to close this out and if there are any questions that are going to pop open, I will definitely answer them. Get back over here to the YouTube. Give me just a second. Okay, there, I'm back on the YouTube. question has come across from Barb. She says, your book is a workbook. Will the binding hold up? Will the binding hold up? And so that's a really good question. Let me switch over to the book here for a second, because I maybe sometime I'll walk you through my library. I love my book, so I know exactly what she's talking about. You know, will the binding hold up?
Oh,
Be switching over to the camera.
just figured out how to get my screens opened.
Okay. So here's the book itself, and you can see the binding from what I've seen, and I've received several of these in. From what I've seen, the binding is as good as any high quality paperback book that I've received and used to death. And I've used several of like the Spanish workbook types of books before. But keep in mind that if you're purchasing this from Amazon, Amazon has a guarantee. And if you get a book and the binding doesn't hold up, Amazon will honor that. And that's not a reflection on me at all, because I didn't bind the book. They did, but it's a great binding. I would say you're not going to have any problem with it holding up. But again, if you have a problem with the book, if you get it, if it comes to you and it's cut in half, it doesn't look like it's been centered, the binding doesn't hold up, let Amazon know, and Amazon will take care of that. They'll make that right. So that's a very good question. Let me see. I have another question here. This one's from Roz. She says, do you have any advice on getting started for those of us with an okay vocabulary so far? For example, yesterday's vocabulary. By the way, my book is supposed to come tomorrow. To California. Great. Roz, I'll shoot you some ideas on our Facebook group, and so that everybody else can see. But obviously, I would encourage you to, prior to creating this thing, I kept my own vocabulary book. I would encourage you to go through your vocabulary book when you get this book in, and to see which of those common words you've already acquired. And I love that word with language learning, acquired, rather than just learned, that you've acquired has become part of your own vocabulary. But I'll also shoot that over to the group as well. Okay, Isabella, you're welcome for including Vosotros. And it's not a difficult thing to learn. I think it's just it's the uniqueness of it, and so many places that don't include it as opposed to do include it. But it is in the book. Vosotros is in the book, and just going over that helped me to build my ability to conjugate with Vosotros as well. All right. If you'll be my hero if I actually learn which past tense to use. Okay, I'm going to hold you to that. I'm going to document that in my book. Okay. But great questions about the book binding. Great questions are pointing out that it has the Spanish Vosotros in there as well. I want you to be satisfied with this book. If you are satisfied with it, I'm going to ask you to do a favor for me. I'm going to ask you to put a review on Amazon. I've been speaking with other language teachers in addition to Paul to see if they would be interested in sharing this book with their students. And you know, I've spoken to 2 so far, and I'm talking about big name people. You would recognize them if I named them, and they love the book, and I'm very happy about that. That's but awesome. If you like the book, would you put a review? Would you please go to the YouTube channel, even if you're not there right now, if you're on Zoom right now, if you'll go to my YouTube channel and like the YouTube channel, and there's a reason I need you to like it or to subscribe to it. not just like it, to subscribe to it, is so that I can change the name from the weird series of letters that they assigned to the channel name and actually put a name on that channel so that I can predict what the live broadcasts will be. I appreciate everybody's time. Let me go back over to this. I want to respect your time.
Ya lo hiciste.
See. Okay. So again, the table of contents, for me, there's a couple of things that are important in a good book. And one is a great table of contents, and the other is an index. Now, the book does not include an index for a very simple reason. I don't judge that this book needs an index. But I did want to make the table of contents as comprehensive as possible. I am human. I am fallible. If you find a spelling error in here, it's not that I'm trying to change the Spanish language or anything. If you will tell me, the beauty of this book is I can change it on the fly and send up the changes to Amazon. So please let me know if you find anything like that, and be gracious with me. Only beat me a little bit and mock me only a little bit. But I would appreciate that. And so that's what I have for everybody. I want to say, to each and every one of you that took some time out of your day, gracias a todos por tu tiempo. And if you have any questions, I'm going to stay online, and you're welcome to ask them to me. But for all intents and purposes, that is my webinar for you today.
Gracias. Sí, que gusta verte otra vez.
Sí. Y tú también, sí.
Gracias.
It's been a while, Emmy, since I've seen you.
Sí, hace un año.
Un año, sí.
Sí.
Yeah,
okay.
You can tell I don't have my camera going. One, because I've got this isolation beard that makes me look like a hermit. and I'm still recovering from my last bout of pneumonia. And so,
yeah. Stay inside.
Well, Mike, I have several goals with this. I'm working with Jude right now to convert the book from the English speakers learning Spanish for Spanish speakers learning English. And so there's going to be a version of the book for Spanish speakers who are learning English to use the journal. And that's going to be kind of a straightforward one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheeto.
I actually lived in Spain for a year when early in my military career, and we had a large bull just like the one that's on the screen right outside the base. And so that's why I added him on there. Let's see if we have a question coming in from the group here. Gracias, very, very kind. Thank you so much. Gracias, Tamara. Gracias, Isabella. Roz, gracias. I would also like to know what people think about the simulcast on YouTube. I'm trying to figure out how to do it on our Facebook group, where we can put it right up there on our Facebook group. So those of you that are watching on YouTube, if you could shoot me a message on Facebook and tell me how well that worked out for you, that would be great. The nice thing about it is you don't have to download software to use, but you don't get this interactivity. The best you get is a chat. You get to see what they type in as a chat. And so you don't get the face-to-face. All right. So, Emmy, you were moving, weren't you?
Sí, sí. Para desde from a 2-bedroom apartment to a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay.
In the same place. It's just easier for the kids to ride their bicycles in on the ground floor after school.
Oh, great.
Because I babysit them after school, but not now. Yay, sort of.
Yeah. You got a leash.
Yeah.
You pull them back in.
Yeah. Mom's home from work right now, getting paid up to stay home. So that's good.
Well, that is very good. I'm very glad to hear that.
Yeah. So kids need them. Kids need their moms sometimes more than grandmas.
I'm glad it worked out. Did for Raina. I think Raina, are you busier now than you were before? That's
Sí, absolutamente. All of my coworkers were laid off, so I'm the only person left trying to keep the company going. So just the owners and myself.
Give us an update on Paul's website. Where is he at with his?
It was up and running, and I posted that it was good to go. Then it crashed again. So I think they're working on it. Let me see if I can pull it up right now.
Yeah, websites. You don't put these things in your house. They are stored at large companies, and when their actual physical server goes down, it just makes you nervous. It really.
Yeah, it's still down. Did you get that big trailer over there? No, where have I gone? Okay. I've lost the Zoom video, but the site's still down. Uh-oh.
So John says that his book is coming in about 2 weeks.
Nice.
That's great.
I have a quick question, Dan. I'm not a very regular studier. Like, I'm fairly busy and I take, breaks more often than I should. And I'm just going at a really slow pace. How would the daily journal work with that? Do I need to kind of check in with it every day and be like, nope, didn't study?
No, it's not something that you.
My motivation going. Or...
Here's the thing. It isn't. You are not a slave to the journal. Okay. The journal should, when you study, the journal should be a documentation that you've done that and how you feel about what you've done.
Right.
It isn't something if you were describing to me all the things that you were doing just with your work and the tasks of the COVID related tasks.
Yeah.
Let's say you can't study. I mean, there's just not hours in the day for you to be able to study. You shouldn't make an entry and say, I couldn't study today because of this, unless again you want to. You're not a slave to the journal. The journal should be a way that it reflects what you are doing in your studies.
Okay.
And
so like scheduled study days, I would log.
Right. From the previous group, somebody asked a very good question about how much time a day should I spend with the journal? And again, there's not a set time that you would say you should spend an hour with the journal or 15 minutes with the journal. Yeah. But it literally takes seconds to document what you're doing. And as you do something in that, document it there. And the key to it is that it should be able over a period of time to give you a clear picture of why maybe your motivation ebbs and flows, or what are the things that are interfering with your studies. Okay. Like for example, on reading, you might write down that you listened to an hour of Paul and that you wrote an email or you wrote messages to Jude in Messenger and you spoke to Jude in a class, but that you did no reading. And in that, you would describe maybe why you didn't do any reading. And then over a period of time, you're going to see what are those things that are holding you up. And one of the things you might discover that holds you up are people. People hold you up. And then there may be people who seem to do the opposite. They don't hold you up. They propel you forward. And then you can make those adjustments as you go forward in your own studies. So that's the idea of any good measurement system.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to give you guys a by the way, a little thing you don't know about me. I own a patent that the United States Navy uses to measure the effectiveness of staff officers. And so I'm a metrics measurement kind of person. It's my nature. And, and, and I think with any good measurement system, you don't want to become a slave to it. You want it to be an honest reflection of what you've done rather than a forced expectation of something. Okay. So, nobody goes to work and takes the time, the thing that they clock in their time with, the time sheet. I don't even know if they clock in with that anymore, but nobody goes to work and says, hey, I'm clocking in sick, I'm leaving. They just call it. Just skip that. We'll skip that. And so that measurement device, that time card, it's blank that day. And I think one of the dangers with modern language learning, is we've come so accustomed to everything should be entertaining, and it should be a game, and I should receive a prize or a title or points or something like that, and it kind of makes you a slave to that system, and you're really not learning. You're just there so that you can make sure that you get your points for that day, or that next level star or whatever, and that's how I feel about it, at least. That's my philosophy on the language. Well, I will say again, thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a good, safe weekend. And hopefully in the next few months, we can all look forward to taking those vacations to some Spanish-speaking place that we all want to go to. So, okay. All right.
Okay, adiós. Yo, que tengan un buen día a todos.
Gracias.
Okay.
Sí.
Bye-bye.
Está bien. Okay. Adiós.
Adiós.
Stop this meeting here.